Bullies threaten the simple black waitress, unaware she is karate black belt. Laura balanced a tray of steaming coffee cups as she weaved through the busy campus cafe. It was the lunchtime rush, and conversations buzzed around her. But one table in the corner drew unwanted attention. A group of affluent students lounged there, laughter erupting at private jokes. At the center was James Culress, his designer sneakers propped insolently on a chair. As Laura approached with their order, James smirked and called out, "Hey waitress, smile more." The words rang loud enough for nearby patrons to pause. Laura's stomach tightened. The condescension in his voice made it clear he didn't see her just a disposable server. Still, she mustered a polite smile as she set down the lattes. Instead of thanking her, James's friend flicked a penny onto the table. The tiny coin spun and settled near Laura's hand. "A little tip for you," he snickered. Another friend added with a mock sincere grin, "Maybe this helps you pay tuition." A couple of them snorted with laughter. Laura's cheeks burned. She was indeed a scholarship student working part-time to afford school, but how dare they? She felt a prickle of embarrassment mixed with anger. The penny lay there like an insult. As she turned to leave, one of James's buddies muttered, "I love her braids." So, ghetto fabulous in a faux impressed tone. Laura's back stiffened. She heard James choke back a laugh. Another raised his phone under the table, snapping a surreptitious photo of Laura as she walked away carrying her empty tray. Within seconds, the guys huddled around the phone, snickering. Campus Zoo Day. Perfect. One of them chuckled, thumbs tapping to upload the image. Laura didn't need to see it to know it was bad. Her hands trembled, gripping the tray. She bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, forcing herself not to react. The cafe's other customers pretended not to notice the cruel spectacle, but a few shot her pitying looks. Humiliation and fury warred inside Laura. She quickly retreated behind the counter, heart pounding. Rage fluttered in her chest, begging to be set free. But Laura closed her eyes and inhaled slowly. Not here. Don't let them win. Years of navigating prejudice had taught her one thing. If she lashed out even slightly, people would immediately paint her as the angry black girl, a label that could follow her forever if she wasn't careful. So she swallowed the insult along with her pride. As James's table howled with laughter over the posted photo, Laura kept her eyes down and forced herself to focus on the next customer. The bitter taste of injustice lingered, but this would not be the last time James tried to make her feel small. Earlier that semester, Laura's first day on the job, the morning sun had barely risen when Laura stepped into the campus cafe for her first shift. A freshman on a full scholarship, she had taken this part-time job to help cover books and living expenses. Her nerves fluttered. It was tough balancing coursework with work study, but she was determined. Smoothing her simple uniform and adjusting her neat box braids, Laura mustered a smile. "You can do this," she told herself. Around mid-morning, a loud burst of laughter announced the entrance of James and his entourage. They commandeered the largest table as if they owned the place. Laura noticed their designer clothes, expensive gadgets strewn about, and an air of careless privilege. As she wiped the counter, she heard whispers from co-workers. The Culress family name came up. James Culress, a junior known for partying and never worrying about money. Rumor was his family were major donors to the university. James walked around like he held ownership rights. Laura had dealt with entitled kids in high school, but here she hoped for a fresh start. Still, she kept an eye on the group. James sauntered up to the counter while his friends elbowed each other and watched. He flashed Laura a pearly smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning. You new here?" "What's your name, honey?" he drawled, leaning on the counter. Laura straightened her posture. "I'm Laura. Can I get you something to drink?" she replied evenly. James ignored the menu. "Laura, pretty name for a pretty girl," he said smoothly. "How about you take a break and let me buy you dinner tonight?" His tone was mock gallant, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. A couple of his friends snickered. Laura's face heated. She didn't want this kind of attention, certainly not on day one. Maintaining a professional tone, she shook her head politely. "Thank you, but I'm not interested. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" she added, trying to keep it courteous. James's smile froze. He clearly hadn't expected rejection, especially not public rejection in front of his posse. A few nearby patrons glanced over. James let out an exaggerated "ouch," clutching his heart theatrically. "Wow, didn't think a scholarship kid would turn me down. Must think she's above her station," he announced with a cold chuckle. Laura's stomach dropped. The words hit like a slap. She was on scholarship. So what? How did he even know? She realized her campus ID badge bore a small scholar logo. James must have spotted it and decided to use it against her. Blood rushed in her ears as a hush fell in the immediate area. James's friends snorted with laughter. One of them stage whispered, "Dude, she curved you hard." Laura's throat tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. She met James's sneering gaze and simply said, "I'll get your drinks started," before turning away to the espresso machine. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed the buttons. Behind her, James's buddies heckled, rejected by the freshman. "That's rough, bro." James's face had gone red. That first encounter drew battle lines. James had never been embarrassed like that, turned down by a nobody in front of everyone. His wounded ego churned into resentment. For Laura, the incident was mortifying, but she tried to shrug it off and focus on work. Little did she know it was only the beginning. Escalation of harassment. In the days that followed, James made Laura a target. He and his crew frequented the cafe more often always when Laura was on shift. Their behaviors grew bolder. One busy afternoon, Laura carried a heavy tray of iced coffees to deliver to a table. As she carefully approached James's table, yes, they had claimed the same spot again. James extended his expensive sneaker right in her path. There was no time to dodge. The tray lurched as she stumbled over his foot. A couple of cups toppled cold frappuccino, splattering onto the floor and onto Laura's shoes. Gasps and snickers rose around them. Laura caught her balance, heart thudding. "Oh, oops," James exclaimed with faux innocence, leaning back with hands up. "Didn't see you down there, sweetheart." His friends roared with laughter at his double-edged quip, not only pretending it was an accident but also implying Laura was beneath his notice. Heat flooded Laura's face. She knelt to quickly mop up the spilled drink with napkins, every eye in the cafe seeming to bore into her. James watched her on hands and knees with a satisfied grin. One friend had his phone out recording a video as she scrambled to clean the mess. Laura's jaw clenched so hard it hurt, but she said nothing. Later that evening, that video circulated on the students' group chat. The caption read, "When the scholarship girl thinks she's too good for you." It showed a few seconds of Laura tripping and kneeling on the floor. The snippet was edited to look almost comical, as if karma had literally knocked her down for rejecting James. Dozens of students saw it. Some replied with laughing emojis, others with comments like, "Bruh, this is savage and she gotta learn her place." Laura became aware of the video when a sympathetic coworker showed it to her after it had made the rounds. Mortified, Laura felt a mix of anger and helplessness. How could they twist their harassment into making her the joke? She wanted to reply to explain, but she knew engaging on their level would only add fuel. Instead, she tried to keep her head down, hoping the short-lived campus gossip would move on. But James wasn't done. Over the next week, the microaggressions continued relentlessly. James and his friends treated Laura as their personal plaything whenever they visited. They snapped their fingers to get her attention, called her the help, and made a show of reading name tags and saying, "Laura, hurry up with my order, will ya?" in saccharine tones. One day, James sauntered up to the counter and loudly ordered an extra dark coffee. No cream. You know the way you like it, with a cruel glint in his eye. His friends burst out laughing at the obvious racial jibe. Laura's fists clenched under the counter nails, biting into her palms. But she forced a neutral expression, responding, "One black coffee," coming up as if she hadn't heard the insult. Inside, she was boiling. Another afternoon, James accidentally knocked over a full cup of iced latte right as Laura handed it to him, soaking her apron and shoes. The icy liquid drenched her socks. She gasped at the shock of cold and looked up to see James filming her reaction on his phone, a wicked grin on his face. Snap. He captured the moment her composure faltered, eyes wide, mouth agape in surprise. James chuckled. Clumsy me. You okay there? Laura bit back furious tears as she wiped coffee off her legs. James's phone was still aimed at her, recording every second of her humiliation. Around them, other patrons watched in uneasy silence. Some looked sympathetic, others entertained. James's crew howled as if it were the funniest comedy sketch. Within an hour, that clip too hit social media with a caption directed at Laura. Should have said yes to me. Now look. The accompanying photo freeze-framed her moment of shock as if it were something to mock. A few students commented that the bullying was getting out of hand, but James's loyal friends drowned them out with jeering remarks. Each incident chipped away at Laura's patience and emotional reserves. Outside of work, she tried to focus on her studies, but it was hard. In her dorm at night, she replayed the confrontations in her mind, cheeks burning with residual shame. Why was this happening? All she had done was politely decline a date. She never sought this attention. Maybe I should have just smiled and laughed it off, she sometimes thought, second-guessing herself. But no, James's behavior wasn't her fault. He was doing this because he could, because no one stood up to him. Laura considered reporting James's harassment to the university, or at least to her boss. The cafe manager, Marjorie, had noticed bits and pieces. She'd seen the spilled coffee and given James a stern eye on that occasion, but Marjorie wasn't always around to witness the subtle jabs. One evening after closing, Marjorie asked if Laura was okay, noting she seemed stressed. Laura almost unloaded everything, the cruel comments, the viral posts, but looking at the kind, middle-aged woman who had given her this job, Laura hesitated. She feared causing trouble. James's family was powerful. If she complained, would she even be taken seriously? He could claim it was all jokes, and she couldn't take a joke. Besides, Laura worried that confirming his abuse might risk her job if the owners didn't want to upset wealthy students. So Laura lied and forced a smile. I'm fine, just a lot on my mind with classes. Marjorie patted her shoulder and said, You let me know if you have any problems. Okay? Laura nodded, tears prickling at the unexpected kindness, but she still stayed silent about James. Above all, one thought kept her from lashing out or making a scene. Don't be the angry black girl. She had learned early in life that people were quick to brand black women as aggressive or hostile at the slightest provocation. All the insensitive comments and racial microaggressions she'd faced felt relentless. But if she ever lost her cool, that would be the story, not the taunts that led to it. So she maintained an almost superhuman patience for things she would normally never tolerate. Projects, appnews.com. Each time James pushed her, she reminded herself, if I snap, they'll paint me as the villain. It was a bitter reality, but one she was keenly aware of. Laura's self-restraint was remarkable. She endured insults and humiliation with gritted teeth and silent dignity. But everyone has a limit. James was determined to find hers, and one fateful afternoon, he finally pushed her too far. Another Friday rolled around, and Laura prayed James's crew would choose some other hangout for once. No such luck. In they swaggered loudly, claiming their table. Laura felt a knot form in her gut when she saw the familiar faces. She took a deep breath and approached to take their order pen and notepad in hand. Today, however, James's posse wore oddly anticipatory grins. Unknown to Laura, they had devised a nasty scheme they would provoke her into an outburst and catch it on tape as proof of her supposed aggressiveness. One friend already had his phone recording audio in his pocket. They wanted a soundbite of Laura snapping. James drummed his fingers as if impatient. Took you long enough. All right, we'll take 4 lattes, he said, then added snidely, and make it quick. We've got better things to do than wait all day. His tone was sharply dismissive, loud enough to turn heads nearby. Laura pressed her lips together and scribbled the order. Stay professional. As she collected menus, one of James's buddies, a tall guy with a baseball cap, leaned back and smirked. And don't mess it up this time. N-word, waitress. He spat out the slur under his breath, but loud enough that Laura heard it clear as a bell. and so did a few customers at adjacent tables. A shocked silence fell around them. The friend's lips curled in a cruel grin. James raised his eyebrows in feigned disapproval, playing to the onlookers, but there was a glint in his eye. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. For a split second, Laura froze. The word reverberated in her mind. She hadn't been called that vile slur in person ever. It was a dagger wrapped in decades of hate stabbing her right in the chest. Her vision blurred with angry tears. The pen in her hand shook. Heart hammering, Laura slowly lifted her gaze to meet the guy's sneering face. "What? Did you just call me?" she said, voice low. James's friend snickered, leaning forward as if to repeat it. "You heard me," he taunted, eyes dancing with malice. James theatrically glanced around as if confused by Laura's reaction. A couple of other patrons watched with concern, sensing a confrontation. Laura's restraint snapped. "Don't you dare call me that again!" she burst out, her voice ringing through the cafe. In that instant, all her pent-up frustration and anger bubbled over into the sharp crack of her words. Her fists were balled at her sides, knuckles white. The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath. The group of bullies leaned back in mock surprise, acting as if she were the one out of line. James widened his eyes and raised his hands for show. "Whoa, easy there!" he exclaimed loud enough for all to hear. "Did you guys hear that she's threatening us now?" He looked around, trying to solicit outrage from the spectators. His other friend had his phone out recording video now, but carefully, he had started only after the slur was said. The camera captured Laura's furious stance and trembling voice, but not the provocation. Laura's chest heaved with rage and hurt. "I warned you," she snarled at the friend who used the slur, her voice taut. She was on the verge of tears, though her eyes blazed. To be publicly dehumanized like that, it took every ounce of willpower not to launch the hot coffee pot at them. Before the situation could deteriorate further, Marjorie, the cafe manager, rushed over, drawn by the commotion. The middle-aged woman stepped between Laura and the table of boys, her expression thunderous. "Enough," Marjorie snapped, glaring at James and his cronies. "I've had it with you lot. Either sit down and behave or get out of my cafe." She put a protective hand on Laura's shoulder. "Laura is here to work, not to take your garbage." James feigned an innocent, hurt look. "What? We didn't do anything. She just started yelling at us for no reason," he lied, loud and indignant. A few bystanders murmured, uncertain of the full story. The confrontation had escalated so fast. Marjorie wasn't buying it. Her eyes flashed. "I heard what your friend said." She pointed a finger at the guy in the baseball cap who shifted uncomfortably. "One more incident and I'm reporting all of you to campus authorities. Now, do you still want those lattes or are you leaving?" James's face twitched. Being addressed like a misbehaving child in front of everyone clearly stung his pride. He forced a smile that looked more like a snarl. "We'll be sitting quietly," he said, leaning back and crossing his arms. Marjorie nodded curtly and guided Laura away a few steps. Laura was shaking. Her outburst had felt good for a split second, but now fear crept in. She worried she had violated some work rule by yelling at customers even if they deserved it. Marjorie whispered to her, "Are you okay?" Laura wiped a hot tear that escaped down her cheek and nodded. "They provoked me. I'm sorry for raising my voice," she stammered. Marjorie gave her a sympathetic look. "I know, honey. I heard that awful word. But not here, not now. They want you to snap so they can make you the bad guy," she said gently. Those words sank in. Laura realized with a sinking heart that they had likely recorded her reaction. She glanced back. Indeed, one of James's friends was fiddling with his phone, a smug smile on his face. I couldn't help it," Laura whispered. The injustice of it all brought a fresh sting of tears. Marjorie squeezed her shoulder. "I understand. And you have every right to be upset. Just try to keep calm while you're on the clock. I'll be right here if they bother you again." Laura inhaled deeply, willing herself to calm down. She returned to behind the counter, attempting to refocus on work. James's table was strangely quiet now. They had what they came for. Within minutes, they left in a hurry without even getting their coffees, stifling laughter as they went. Marjorie scowled at them, but they were beyond caring. The trap had been sprung. That evening, Laura's worst fear came true. A video surfaced on the campus social media page, showing a clip of her eyes flashing and voice raised. "Don't you dare call me that again." In the footage, there was no context. It looked like she simply exploded out of nowhere at some poor customers. The caption plastered on the video, "Aggressive black girl loses it on us for no reason." The post spread like wildfire. People who hadn't been there started commenting, "Whoa, what set her off? Isn't that the barista from Bean Hall Cafe? So unprofessional. And there's no excuse for that kind of aggression no matter what." Some comments were outright racist or snide. "Somebody's got an attitude problem. Must have left the hood, but the hood didn't leave her." James and his friends under fake accounts fanned the flames by replying things like, "All we did was ask for coffee." She went nuts. Of course, those in the cafe who witnessed the slur tried to jump in. A student named Javier, who had heard everything, replied, "You conveniently left out that they called her the N-word." But James's cronies shot back, "LOL. No one said any slur. Stop making excuses for her." It became a mess of back-and-forth arguments in the comments. The truth was buried under a mountain of sensationalism. Many folks who saw the video truly believed Laura had an anger management issue. After all, the camera doesn't lie. They saw her practically snarling. Context was everything, but context was exactly what James had stripped away. When Laura saw the video online that night from her dorm room, she felt sick to her stomach. Her hands quivered as she scrolled through the nasty comments. Her reputation, at least among those who didn't know her, was being trashed. A knot of anxiety and shame formed in her throat. Would this affect her job? Her standing at school, she had visions of the dean calling her in, or her scholarship being reviewed for behavioral issues. It was hard to breathe thinking about all that could go wrong because of this twisted narrative. Marjorie, however, was firmly in her corner. The next day, Laura came into work apprehensively expecting reprimand. Instead, Marjorie gave her a side hug and said, "I saw that garbage they posted. Don't you worry, I've already spoken to the campus admin and explained what really happened. If anyone's getting in trouble, it'll be those boys for harassment." That eased Laura's panic a little. Still, the damage to her image among peers was done. In classes, she noticed a few people staring or whispering. A classmate whom she barely knew approached and asked, "Hey, was that you in that video? What happened?" Laura, tired and hurt, only replied, "They didn't show the whole story," and left it at that. It felt like James had won a round. He had successfully portrayed her as the aggressor to a chunk of the student body. Laura couldn't stand the injustice of it. Her nights became sleepless, replaying the moment over and over, coming up with snappy comebacks or alternative ways she could have handled it. But in each scenario, the truth was the same. They used her righteous anger against her. While James's trap achieved its goal of vilifying Laura, it also steeled something in her. A resolve was hardening, a refusal to be victimized quietly any longer. She wasn't sure how or when, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't continue to suffer this abuse indefinitely. The breaking point had been reached, and soon, very soon, Laura would have an opportunity to show James and everyone watching who she truly was. A few days after the slur incident, the atmosphere on campus remained tense. Laura became a reluctant sort of celebrity. Some students avoided her, others offered silent nods of solidarity. James, meanwhile, was reveling among his inner circle about how he put that girl in her place. But he was also nursing his wounded ego. He still hadn't gotten over being physically bested when she dodged his trip and publicly defied. The viral video painting Laura as unhinged was satisfying, but James wanted a more concrete revenge. His friends goaded him. "She made you look stupid twice. First the rejection, then pinning you as a racist. You gonna let that slide?" James's eyes gleamed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Of course he wouldn't let it slide. However, Marjorie's warning at the cafe had put him on notice. He couldn't just overtly harass Laura there without risk. He needed her to mess up again, and this time really mess up in a way that could get her fired or worse. The opportunity came unexpectedly one afternoon. The cafe was packed with students seeking their caffeine fix. Laura was bussing a table near James's group. Yes, they were back yet again. Tension hung in the air whenever they were present, but since the last incident they had been strangely quiet, perhaps wary of Marjorie's threat. They sat whispering among themselves. Laura could feel their eyes following her every move, which set her nerves on edge. As she turned away from their table with an empty tray, James made his move. In a flash, he reached out and yanked on the back of Laura's uniform polo, right below the collar. The sudden tug pulled her off balance. She stumbled backward, dropping the tray with a clatter. A half-finished cup of coffee on the tray flipped over and drenched the front of James's designer shirt in brown liquid. It all happened so fast that for a moment nobody reacted. Then laughter erupted, but not from James's table this time. The surrounding customers, having witnessed James's provocation, chuckled at the karmic justice of him wearing the coffee he'd caused her to spill. Someone even clapped. James, now standing with coffee seeping into his expensive shirt, looked livid. This outcome wasn't part of his plan. His humiliation was only compounded by the laughter around. With a snarl, he shoved the empty cup away and reached out as if to grab Laura's arm aggressively. "You bit!" He spat, face twisted in rage, forgetting for a second his public charade. But James never got to finish that slur or put his hands on her. In that split second, something in Laura snapped into place. A calm, cold focus. All the fear and restraint melted away, replaced by clarity. He was attacking her now, and she had every right to defend herself. This ends here. Before James's hand could clamp on her arm, Laura moved on pure instinct and training. Few onlookers knew that in high school, Laura had practiced jiu-jitsu at a local community center. To channel her stress, she had continued some martial arts practice in a campus rec class. Now those lessons came flooding back. She sidestepped and caught James's wrist in one fluid motion, twisting it away with a controlled force. James yelped in pain as his arm was bent at an awkward angle. In the stunned heartbeat that followed, Laura smoothly swept James's leg out from under him and guided his momentum downward. The next thing anyone knew, James was face down on the floor, one arm pinned behind his back, and Laura was on top of him, kneeling, holding him in place. A collective gasp swept the cafe. The whole thing had taken maybe 3 seconds. James's friends leapt to their feet, knocking chairs over. One pulled out a phone to record, another seemed to debate intervening. "What the hell?" one of them shouted. James struggled, sputtering in shock and rage, but Laura had his arm locked firmly in a submission hold he couldn't easily escape without risking a broken limb. Laura's voice came out deathly calm and clear. "Don't ever put your hands on me again." She released James's arm and stood up, backing away. James scrambled up from the floor, face red as a tomato and contorted with humiliation. He lunged as if to retaliate, but one of his friends grabbed him, hissing, "Not here, man, not here." The friend with the phone was still recording, capturing James's furious expression and coffee-soaked outfit, and Laura standing defiantly with hands clenched, chest heaving. By now, the entire cafe was captivated. Some students even cheered and whistled at the dramatic turn of events. It's not every day you see a popular rich kid get taken down a peg, literally, by someone half his size. A couple of Laura's co-workers rushed forward to make sure she was okay, while Marjorie reappeared, drawn by the uproar. She took in the scene, a toppled chair, coffee everywhere, James fuming, and Laura resolute. Marjorie crossed her arms. "That's it. James, you and your friends, out. You're banned from this cafe," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "You can't do that," James barked, but it came out petulant. He was acutely aware of all the eyes on him, of phones pointed his way. This was a public relations nightmare for him. He'd been beaten and embarrassed by Laura in front of everyone. He glared at Laura with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed under his breath. Turning on his heel, James stormed out, dripping coffee, with his entourage trailing behind in stupefied silence. One of them muttered, "Dude, we got it all on video," as they exited. As soon as they were gone, the cafe erupted in a buzz. Some people actually applauded Laura. A few girls at a corner table were practically bouncing in their seats with glee. "Oh my God, that was badass," one exclaimed. She totally owned him. Another laughed. Laura, adrenaline still coursing through her, suddenly felt lightheaded. She hadn't set out to cause a scene or hurt anyone. She just reacted. Now that the moment was over, she worried. Had she just made things worse? Would she be fired for fighting a customer even if it was self-defense? Marjorie quickly came to her side. To Laura's surprise, the older woman was smiling. "I didn't know you knew how to do that," she said, equal parts astonished and impressed. "Are you all right?" Laura nodded, her heart still hammering. "He grabbed me first," she began, but Marjorie waved it off. "I saw. And frankly, he got what he deserved." She raised her voice to address the room. "All right, everyone, show's over. Let's get back to enjoying our coffee. Nothing more to see here." There was a ripple of chuckles and the patrons returned to their own business, though the excited murmuring continued. Laura went to the back room to take a breather, her hands trembling now that the rush of confrontation was ebbing. She sank onto a stool and took a long drink of water. Inside her mind, she replayed the takedown. It had been so swift and decisive. In that moment, she hadn't been a frightened victim. She had been powerful. Despite her worry about consequences, a part of her felt a fierce satisfaction. James had crossed a physical line, and she had shown him she was not easy prey. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out to see dozens of notifications blowing up. Videos of the incident had already hit the internet in record time. There were multiple angles. Apparently half the cafe had recorded it. On TikTok, clips were being shared under captions like, "She snapped and took him down." In one particularly cinematic clip filmed by someone who had been sitting a few tables away, the camera captured the entire sequence clearly. James pulling her fluid takedown, James's stunned face on the floor. The comments were flooding in. Laura's fingers hovered over the screen as she scrolled. To her relief, many comments were positive or even ecstatic. Finally, she stood up for herself. He 100% had it coming. LOL got folded in 2 seconds. Queen behavior. A lot of users were tagging friends saying things like, "This is the girl I mentioned, she's a legend." Some had even added background music to slow-motion replays of her flipping James, turning it into a short, epic action scene. It was surreal. Laura felt a mix of embarrassment and pride reading those, but alongside the praise there was plenty of negativity too. Some comments repeated the old narrative, "Wow, violent much. She should be expelled. This psycho needs to be in jail." Others took a racist tone. Typical resorting to violence. Angry black woman doing what they do, SMH. James's partial video of her yelling had already primed some people to view her as volatile, and this incident out of context looked like an assault to them. One particularly vile comment read, "She should be locked up before she hurts some innocent guys again." It made Laura's blood boil. Innocent guys, James literally yanked her first. But the internet warriors didn't care about truth, they cared about drama. And now she was the drama. Within hours, the campus was polarized. Laura was the name on everyone's lips. Some students approached her after class to commend her bravery. A petite sophomore in her math class shyly asked, "I saw the video. Thank you for standing up to those bullies. People like me feel safer because of what you did." Laura was touched. She hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe her actions did give others a bit of hope. On the flip side, a student from a well-off fraternity sneered at her in passing loud enough for her to hear, "Better not mess with that girl, she might go UFC on you." His buddies laughed. The caricature of her as a hot-headed brute was spreading among some circles, likely ones sympathetic to James. Laura tried to ignore these barbs, but it was difficult not to feel isolated. Even if what she did was right, it was scary being at the center of a viral storm. Meanwhile, James nursed his pride and a sore arm in private. That night, his ego took another hit as he scrolled through social media and saw himself plastered across the internet, being slammed to the ground by Laura on an endless loop. Memes had already popped up, one showing a cartoonish outline of a man being flipped with the caption, "Get wrecked, James." His own friends were quiet in the group chat, unsure how to console him. In truth, some of them were just as shocked as everyone else at Laura's physical prowess. James smashed his phone against a pillow in frustration. This was not how things were supposed to go. In his mind, she was making him look like a fool again and again. First, she rejected him, then she defied his harassment, and now she physically overpowered him. And worst of all, people were applauding her for it. The narrative was slipping from his control. James seethed with hatred. He decided then and there, if the school won't punish that girl for assaulting me, I'll make sure she faces consequences elsewhere. Laura, oblivious to James's scheming that night, tried to relax in her dorm by calling her mother, a voice of reason and comfort. Mrs. Johnson was aghast at the story, but supportive. "I'm proud of you for defending yourself," her mother said gently. "But please be careful. People like that with entitlement, they can be dangerous when their ego is bruised." Laura knew her mom was right. James wouldn't just slink away after this. He'd likely retaliate. The thought made her uneasy. Still, a part of Laura felt a growing confidence. She had discovered her own strength. The outpouring of support from the community, classmates coming up to say thank you, strangers online hailing her. It all made her realize she wasn't as alone as she felt during those weeks of torment. If James tried something again, she had allies now, eyes watching, and she wasn't going to be easy prey. Not anymore. 2 nights later, a cool breeze swept through campus as Laura ended her late shift at the cafe. It was close to 9 p.m., and darkness had fallen. She changed out of her uniform, slung her backpack over one shoulder, and grabbed her helmet. She had a second-hand scooter she used to get around. Marjorie offered to have one of the cooks walk her out. Given recent events, everyone was a bit on edge, but Laura politely declined. The parking lot was just behind the cafe, and she'd walked it dozens of times. Besides, she didn't want to broadcast fear. The lot was mostly empty at this hour, illuminated by a few flickering overhead lights. Laura's footsteps echoed as she crossed the asphalt toward her old car. She alternated between her car and scooter depending on weather. Tonight she'd driven. She passed pools of shadow between the sparsely parked vehicles. The adrenaline of the past days had settled, leaving her tired but determined to get on with life. Suddenly, the crunch of multiple footsteps sounded from behind a nearby SUV. Laura's senses prickled. From behind the vehicle stepped James, followed by 3 of his friends. They fanned out, blocking her path to her car. Laura's heart lurched into her throat. Her instinct had been right. He wasn't finished. James stepped forward into the glow of a lamp, his face a mask of smug anger. He wore a long-sleeved shirt, likely to hide any bruises on his arm from their earlier scuffle. His buddies flanked him, 2 guys from the usual crew, and one more she recognized vaguely from a different clique, likely backup. One of them unscrewed the cap on a bottle of soda and gave it a vigorous shake. Foam sprayed out in a hiss. He tossed the bottle aside, the gesture clearly meant to unnerve. The quiet pshh of fizzing soda on pavement underscored the tension. Laura's pulse pounded in her ears, but she forced herself to appear calm. "What do you want?" she asked, voice steady. Her eyes flicked around. No one else was nearby. The nearest dorm was a short walk, but at this hour, not many were coming and going. It was essentially 4 against 1 in the dark. Despite the fear gnawing at her, Laura subtly shifted her stance, recalling her self-defense training. "Keep your weight balanced. Protect your center." James answered, his tone dripping with venomous sarcasm. "Look who's here." The angry little waitress. He sneered. He slowly advanced a step. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole world, you know that." His voice dropped the fake friendliness entirely. Here in the dark, he didn't need to pretend to be the good guy. The real James, entitled, furious, unhinged, emerged. "Now we're gonna see how tough you really are without your boss or a crowd to save you." Laura's mouth went dry. "I don't want any trouble, James. Just let me by," she said, trying for a firm tone. She inched slightly back, but one of the guys moved behind her, cutting off retreat. Trouble laughed, one of James's friends, the same tall one who'd slurred her in the cafe. He cracked his knuckles. "Girl, you are the trouble, and it's time you got taught a lesson." Another friend, phone already in hand, grinned. "This is gonna be gold on TikTok. World star, here we come." They were literally planning to film themselves attacking her. The brazenness was chilling yet unsurprising. James likely thought even if it leaked, his family's influence would protect them, or that people would think she deserved it after seeing her violent outburst videos. Laura realized reasoning with them was pointless. These guys had come for a show, to scare her, hurt her, and capture her humiliation on camera. A surge of both fear and resolve swept through her. She might get hurt tonight, but she swore to herself she wouldn't go down without a fight. James stepped closer, mere feet from her now. "What's the matter? Not so tough without a tray in your hand, huh?" he taunted, eyes glinting. The others chuckled, encircling her. Laura's grip tightened on her helmet. It was a solid object in her hand, better than nothing. Then, with a nasty grin, James lunged. He grabbed at Laura's jacket with his left hand, yanking her forward. The sudden move caught her off guard momentarily. Her helmet clattered to the ground as he tore her backpack off her shoulder and flung it aside. Within seconds, the other three closed in. It was happening. They were really doing this. But adrenaline is a funny thing. Time seemed to slow in that critical moment. Laura saw James draw back his right fist to throw a punch. In her periphery, another guy was reaching for her arm and another circling to grab her from behind. If they managed to pile on, she'd be overwhelmed. Don't let them. Crack! James's fist whooshed towards her face. Laura reacted on instinct, years of martial arts practice guiding her. She sidestepped and blocked, deflecting the punch with her forearm. With her other hand, she seized James's extended arm and pivoted smoothly, using his momentum against him. In a blink, she executed a textbook wrist lock and twist, a joint lock that torqued James's arm unnaturally. He screamed in pain as his knees buckled. Laura shoved him away, sending him reeling. Friend number one, the tall slur thrower, lunged from her right, trying to tackle her around the midsection. Laura spun and delivered a swift kick to his knee. A dull thud, and he yelped as the leg buckled. She followed with an upward palm strike to his jaw that snapped his head back. He stumbled into the side of a parked car, dazed. Almost simultaneously, friend number two, the one who had circled behind, attempted to grab her in a bear hug. Before he could lock his arms, Laura dropped her weight and drove her elbow straight back into his gut with all her might. Whump! The air rushed out of him in an audible groan. She then slammed the back of her head into his nose. Not a perfect hit, but enough to make him howl and loosen his grip, staggering backwards with a hand over his face. Friend number three, who had been filming, cursed in surprise. He had expected an easy beatdown to record, but now his footage showed a blur of his buddies dropping like flies. Panicking but determined to get something on video, he kept the camera trained on the fray, backing up toward a lamppost for a wider shot. James recovered from the wrist lock rage, overcoming pain, and charged at Laura's side. He managed to snag her braid this time, yanking it cruelly. Laura gasped as her head was pulled back. James's friends, regrouping despite injuries, moved in again. The tall one limped over from the car, fury in his eyes, and swung at her. Laura raised an arm to block the wild punch, but from behind her friend number two, blood trickling from his nose, locked an arm around her throat in a chokehold, having recovered enough to rejoin. Things looked dire. Laura was restrained by one and cornered by the rest. She sputtered as the arm squeezed her windpipe, black spots dancing in her vision. James stepped in front of her, holding her braid tight to control her. His face was inches from hers, twisted in a triumphant sneer. "Not so tough now, are you?" Laura didn't let him finish. In a desperate burst, she lifted her foot and stomped down hard on the instep of the guy choking her from behind. He screamed and reflexively released his grip. Laura instantly ducked and tore free from James's hold as well, leaving a few strands of hair in his hand. She spun low and swept her leg in a wide arc, a precise leg sweep that took out James's legs and the tall friends at once. They crashed to the ground in a heap. Friend number two, the one she'd headbutted, roared and lunged at her again, swinging wildly. Laura sidestepped and used his momentum to shove him face first into a car door with a heavy clang. He collapsed to the asphalt, groaning and disoriented. In the span of perhaps 20 seconds, Laura had floored all 4 attackers. Now they lay scattered around her, James on his backside, scuffing away from her in fear. The tall friend crumpled and cursing, unable to stand on his kicked knee. The second friend whimpering on the ground, holding his face. And the third friend still recording, but with trembling hands and a pale face. In the eerie quiet that followed, the only sounds were the ragged panting of the fallen bullies and Laura's own heavy breaths. Her blood was up, adrenaline making her feel almost detached, like she was watching someone else in a movie. She looked around, chest heaving. For a moment, none of them moved. The friend with the phone broke the silence with a shaky voice. "Holy sh..." He never finished. In his distraction, he had let the phone droop. Without warning, the device slipped from his grasp and hit the pavement, possibly still recording, but now capturing only the nighttime sky. He didn't even bother to pick it up. He was too busy gaping at Laura like she was some avenging angel of wrath. James, still scooting backward on the ground, found his voice at last, though it cracked. You're done." He spat, wincing as he tried to prop himself up with his likely sprained wrist. "You assaulted us. All of us. You're finished. We'll sue you. We'll get you expelled. You're going to jail." His words tumbled out in a crazed mix of pain and malice. Even after all this, he was still trying to sound in control, to make her fear him. Laura took a step toward him, and James actually flinched and scrambled to get up. There was genuine fear in his eyes now. "Stay away," he snarled, backing off. The other conscious friend helped the tall one to his feet, and they half-carried the noseless one. Collecting themselves as best they could, the 4 of them limped and staggered away toward the far side of the lot. James kept shouting threats, his pride not letting him leave quietly. "You're going to pay for this. You're dead. Laura, you hear me?" His voice echoed. Laura stood there, adrenaline slowly ebbing, watching them retreat. Her entire body trembled, partly from exertion, partly from the emotional toll. She realized she had a small cut on her lip, and her throat was sore from the chokehold. But she was okay. She had survived and won. As the bullies disappeared into the darkness, Laura finally allowed herself to feel the wave of emotions: relief, anger, and an empowering sense of enough is enough. A few late-working students at a distance had heard the commotion and witnessed the tail end of the fight. They now approached cautiously. One girl raised her phone not to film, but to call campus security. A guy removed his earbuds and asked incredulously, "Are you all right?" "That was insane." Laura nodded, her voice shaky. I think so." Another student gently handed her the helmet she'd dropped. "I saw them jump you," he said. "Do you need medical help?" She shook her head. Other than a bruised throat and maybe some sore muscles, she was fine. Within minutes, the campus police arrived, alerted by multiple calls. Laura found herself overwhelmed, giving a statement describing the attackers, not that it was any mystery who they were, and submitting to a check by EMTs who had been called in case of injuries. As she sat on the back bumper of an ambulance sipping water, she caught snippets of radio chatter. Suspects claim they were assaulted. All 4 present at health center with minor injuries. Insists the girl was violent. So James's gang had run straight to the campus health clinic, or security spinning their version. That was no surprise. Laura's jaw tightened. They were really trying to flip the script again. But this time there were witnesses who saw the ambush, and at least one phone that had recorded the entire brawl, likely including James's initial grab and their threats. In fact, friend number 3's phone had been left behind. One of the campus officers retrieved the device from the ground. Its camera had captured audio and video of the whole incident in unbroken sequence, the ultimate impartial witness. As Laura sat in the ambulance, an officer reviewed the footage on that phone, eyebrows climbing as he realized what he was seeing. He glanced at Laura, then at his partner. "Well, this changes things," he muttered. Laura couldn't see the video, but she could guess. It would show the boys attacking first, clearly outnumbering her, and then getting their comeuppance. For the first time in weeks, the truth of one of these incidents was caught on tape in full, and that truth was squarely on Laura's side. That night, after giving detailed statements and ensuring she was safe to go home, Laura collapsed into bed, utterly exhausted. The events played on a loop in her mind. It felt surreal. She had physically defended herself against multiple attackers and walked away. Despite the fear and chaos, she felt a deep sense of pride. But as she drifted to sleep, one thought nagged at her: James's final threat. "You're finished. We'll sue. We'll get you expelled." He was beaten, but not defeated. If anything, this loss might drive him to more desperate measures. The war wasn't over yet. Indeed, the very next day, news of the parking lot fight was everywhere. If the cafe scuffle had caused a stir, this was an earthquake. Cell phone footage of the brawl, from friend number 3's recovered phone and an additional distant video from a bystander, hit the internet overnight. On TikTok and YouTube Shorts, the clips amassed hundreds of thousands of views rapidly. The narrative was straightforward in visual terms. The violent barista had now taken down 4 guys at once. To many, she was an instant legend. Memes of Wonder Woman and Marvel superheroes were pasted with Laura's face. Comments poured in. "She's like Black Widow. Don't mess with Laura, iconic." Bullies picked the wrong girl. Others, however, were aghast. "This is beyond vigilantism. She's dangerous. I don't care what they said to her. Breaking bones isn't the answer." The campus itself was in an uproar. Administrators hastily scheduled emergency meetings. Some students organized a spur-of-the-moment rally in support of Laura, chanting against racism and bullying. Others whispered that they felt unsafe with a violent person in their midst. Social media was dividing into Team Laura versus Team James, though interestingly, James's team was mostly limited to anonymous accounts spouting off, and perhaps some of his wealthy peers. Many more, having pieced together James's pattern of provocation, were firmly supporting Laura. The stakes had risen dramatically. Police involvement and potential legal consequences loomed. Little did Laura know James and his family were already moving to deliver what they thought would be the decisive blow against her. The Monday after the parking lot incident, Laura was awakened at dawn by a loud knock on her dorm room door. Groggily, she opened it to find 2 uniformed police officers. One stepped forward, expression neutral. "Laura Johnson?" he asked. Her heart skipped. "Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of assault," he said, matter of fact. Before she fully processed, one officer gently turned her around and secured handcuffs around her wrists. Laura's roommate gasped in shock, emerging from the bathroom to this scene. "What is going on?" her roommate exclaimed. Laura felt a swell of panic and disbelief. "Assault charges. They attacked me." As the officers led her out, one briefly explained, "The individuals from the incident Friday night have filed charges. We have to bring you in. You'll have a chance to make a statement." Neighbors peeked out of doorways as Laura was escorted down the hallway in cuffs. The humiliation was intense. She kept her head down, tears of frustration welling up. James and his friends had actually gone to the police playing victim. And now she was being treated like a criminal. Outside the dorm, a black sedan was waiting. To Laura's surprise, James stood beside it, not injured enough to be absent, it seemed, with a smug older man in a suit. The man had a hawk-like face and radiated self-importance, likely their lawyer. James watched with a nasty grin as Laura was brought out. "Told you you're done," he called to her just loud enough that she could hear. She stared back, anger and fear boiling inside, but said nothing. The officers guided her into their patrol car. As they pulled away, she glimpsed a small crowd of students gathering at a distance, phones out. Some were shouting in protest, "This is BS." She didn't do anything wrong. Others simply recorded the spectacle of Laura, the now infamous girl from the videos, being taken into custody. Down at the police station, Laura was booked and placed in a holding cell. It was her first time in any trouble with the law, and it all felt unreal. She sat on a bench in the cold cell, hands trembling now that she was alone. This can't be happening. The charges were serious. 6 counts of assault. They were claiming 6 victims, perhaps counting someone twice, or including an extra who wasn't even there. They were painting her as a violent offender who ambushed them. The sheer audacity was stunning. That same morning, local news outlets got wind of the story, scholarship student arrested after allegedly attacking peers. Some articles and posts regurgitated the claims from James's side that Laura had launched an unprovoked attack on a group of students causing multiple injuries. They cited sources close to the victims, undoubtedly James's family, describing him and his friends as upstanding young men from prominent families who were brutally assaulted. It was all twisted to sound like Laura was some thug who beat them up out of the blue. There was mention of prior concerning behavior referencing the edited cafe video where she yelled. It was a full-on character assassination. However, as these reports spread, so did pushback. Students who knew the real story or pieces of it began speaking out online and to any journalist who would listen. They talked about James's pattern of racist bullying, the penny tips, the slur in the cafe, the fact that he and his friends cornered her. The hashtag Justice for Laura started trending on campus social media. What began as a spontaneous show of support turned into a movement GeorgetownVoice.com. By afternoon, dozens of students gathered outside the student center, holding signs that read, "Justice for Laura and stop victim blaming and self-defense is not a crime." They chanted slogans condemning racism and bullying. Someone had printed screenshots of the nasty group chat posts like Campus Zoo Day, and the video captions James's crew had circulated, plastering them on posters as evidence of harassment. Professors and staff were drawn into the fray. One African-American professor spoke at the impromptu rally, telling the crowd, "This young woman has endured hatred and fought back because the system failed to protect her. We as a community must stand with her against these false charges." It was a powerful moment, students of all backgrounds cheering in agreement. The demonstration grew, spilling onto the administration lawn. Inside the administration building, university officials were in crisis mode. James's parents, furious about their son's humiliation, had allegedly threatened to withdraw a large donation and sue the school if Laura wasn't severely disciplined. The Culrus wanted her expelled immediately. On the other hand, the growing student protest was demanding the opposite, that she be exonerated and that James's history be investigated. The dean of students, caught in the middle, realized this was no longer a quiet campus matter. It was a public relations nightmare and a potential legal battle. By evening, Laura was released from custody on bail, thanks to a coalition of allies who came to her aid. Marjorie, her boss, had contacted a local attorney, a civil rights lawyer and alumnus, who agreed to represent Laura pro bono after hearing the facts. Additionally, a representative from the state's chapter of the ACLU showed interest in her case, noting possible elements of racial bias in how things were being handled. Surrounded by her lawyer and a few close friends, Laura walked out of the police station to a throng of supporters who had gathered there as well, holding Justice for Laura signs and cheering. Tears filled Laura's eyes at the sight. After feeling so alone and vilified, seeing this support was overwhelming. Strangers patted her on the back and said, "We got you, and stay strong." Local news cameras were waiting. A reporter thrust a microphone toward Laura as she emerged. "Laura, do you have any comment on the allegations that you violently attacked fellow students?" Laura's lawyer intervened. "My client will speak at the appropriate time. Today has been very traumatic for her. We maintain that she acted in self-defense against documented bullying and harassment. The truth will come out in court." The legal process moved faster than usual due to the high-profile nature of the case. A preliminary hearing was scheduled to determine if there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. In the meantime, the university paused its own disciplinary actions, deciding to await the legal outcome and likely hoping to avoid further PR damage. James's side, however, tried to escalate further. They filed a civil lawsuit against Laura for damages, claiming physical and emotional injury to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. They hired a high-powered attorney, the hawk-faced man Laura saw, known for representing wealthy clients and spinning narratives in court. Clearly, the Culrus were out to crush Laura by any means criminal charges, civil damages, expulsion, you name it. But Laura's side was gathering evidence and allies too. The friend's phone footage from the parking lot, which the police had obtained, was a smoking gun. It unambiguously showed James's group instigating the fight using hateful language and Laura defending herself. Once her attorney had a copy, he stated confidently, "This video alone disproves their claims. It shows who the aggressors were." Additionally, Marjorie and 2 cafe co-workers gave sworn statements about James's prior behavior. The slurs, the penny incidents, everything. Several other students came forward with their own stories of James's bullying antics, including a black freshman who described how James once jokingly called him a quota admission and pushed him at a frat party. A pattern of racist harassment was emerging. Even more damning for James, someone anonymously supplied screenshots from a private group chat. Likely one of James's disillusioned friends had leaked it, where James and his buddies had discussed making that girl pay before the parking lot ambush, complete with crude language, and even one saying, "Film it, so she can't lie her way out when we're done." This evidence painted a stark picture of premeditation on their part. The inciting cafe incident also got re-examined. Full video from the security camera, which Marjorie pulled from the cafe's system, showed James's friend leaning over and clearly mouthing something at Laura right before she yelled. One could lip read it was the slur, and it captured James smirking as she reacted. Though there was no audio combined with witness testimony, it corroborated Laura's account. The tide was turning. By the time the preliminary hearing arrived, a broad section of the public was aware that Laura may have been a victim, not a villain. The hashtag #justice. For Laura had gone beyond campus, with people comparing her case to other instances where black individuals, especially women, defended themselves against abuse and were punished for it. It became a minor cause célèbre on social media, tying into discussions about racial bias and self-defense. The courthouse was packed on the day of the hearing. Outside supporters of Laura held a peaceful demonstration with signs and t-shirts emblazoned, "Justice for Laura. Self-defense is a right." Reporters milled about looking for quotes. A smaller group, perhaps a few of James's friends and surprisingly his parents, also gathered, but they were far outnumbered by Laura's advocates. The Colris arrived in a chauffeured car, James in a tailored suit with a brace on his wrist, likely more for show than necessity. He had a few faint bruises, but otherwise looked none the worse for wear. As he walked in, protesters booed. One sign held by a protester read, "Protect Black Women." James scoffed at that, rolling his eyes. Inside the courtroom, Laura sat at the defense table with her attorney, a calm and competent woman named Aisha Thompson. Across from them at the prosecution table was the state's attorney, but most of the arguments were expected to come from James's side via their high-priced lawyer, since they were the ones pressing charges and essentially driving the case. James and 2 of his friends, those not still too injured or ashamed to appear, sat behind the prosecution along with their parents. Laura had Marjorie on her side in the front row, as well as her mother, who had flown in gripping a prayer card in her hand. The room buzzed with tension. The hearing began with the prosecution painting a dire picture. James's lawyer stepped up as a special prosecutor. It's not usual, but the victim's counsel can argue at a prelim if the DA allows. He spoke with dramatic flourish. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Laura Johnson is a danger, a student who on 2 separate occasions violently attacked my clients without justification. We have medical reports of the injuries she caused: contusions, a sprained wrist, a mild concussion. These young men feared for their lives as she trained in combat, unleashed unprovoked rage on them." Laura watched in disbelief as he continued. "This is not a case of self-defense. This is a case of assault. Ms. Johnson had previously shown aggression. We have video of her yelling at these men at a cafe with no provocation. She then lured them and assaulted them in a parking lot." At that, a rumble of murmurs filled the courtroom. The supporters were bristling at the lies. The judge tapped his gavel order. James's lawyer smugly introduced exhibits, a series of photos. He handed them up. These were pictures of James and Co.'s injuries. James's arm in a brace with some artistic bruising, the tall friend's knee in a wrap, the other friend's nose with a bandage. They looked pitiful in the images. Your Honor, these are the results of Ms. Johnson's brutality. We also submit a doctor's report indicating Mr. Colris suffered a hairline fracture in his wrist and Mr. Lee a severe sprain in his knee. Laura's lawyer stood to cross-examine on this point. This doctor's report, can you clarify who this physician is? We haven't had a chance to depose. The fancy lawyer pursed his lips. Dr. Feldman, an orthopedic specialist. Ms. Thompson nodded. Feldman. Is he by any chance the personal doctor of the Colris family? The lawyer objected to relevance, but the judge allowed a little leeway. It turned out, yes, the doctor was a family friend. This drew some raised eyebrows. Already the credibility of the medical claims felt a bit tarnished. Next, James himself was called to testify. He played his role to the hilt, soft-spoken looking, downcast. He claimed that Laura had always been hostile to him for no reason. He described the cafe incident entirely differently. I merely asked if she was okay because she seemed upset, and she suddenly yelled at us. It was scary, honestly. We didn't know what we did wrong. In the audience, someone loudly whispered, "Liar," which earned a glare and another gavel rap. James then recounted the parking lot. We were walking to our cars after studying in the library, and out of nowhere she came at us accusing us of messing with her. We told her we didn't want any trouble, but she just snapped. It's all a blur. She was hitting and kicking, and we were just trying to get away. He even managed to squeeze out a tear, talking about how he thought he might never see his family again because of how violently she attacked them. Murmurs of disbelief and some disgusted laughter came from Laura's supporters. Laura clenched her fists under the table. Hearing him flip reality so boldly was enraging. But her attorney gave her a reassuring side glance. Their turn would come, and they had receipts. On cross-examination, Ms. Thompson was surgical. Mr. Colris, you testified, Ms. Johnson attacked without cause. Do you deny ever harassing or insulting her prior? Absolutely, James said, face the picture of innocence. She suddenly displayed a poster-sized print of a social media post, the one of Laura kneeling after tripping, captioned, "When the scholarship girl thinks she's too good for you." James's face went pale. His lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it for cross-examination relevance. Mr. Colris, is this not your friend Brian in this video? And is that not you in the background laughing? He stammered. That was just a joke, taken out of context. She hit again. What about this? Another poster, a screenshot of the group chat with, "Let's scare that buck tonight. Film it so she can't lie with the sender name obscured for privacy, but context obvious." James's lawyer leapt up with an objection about authentication. Ms. Thompson said they'd call a witness later to authenticate. The judge nodded. James was visibly sweating now. Then she asked Mr. Colris, "Do you recall pulling Ms. Johnson's hair and grabbing her in the parking lot?" He denied it vehemently. "No, absolutely not. She's the one who grabbed me." That's when Laura's lawyer decided it was time. "No further questions for now," she said, and James stepped down, shooting a glare at Laura. Laura's side began their defense. First, Marjorie was called. She recounted with clear professional demeanor the entire saga at the cafe, how James's group had tormented Laura with racist comments, how she heard the slur with her own ears, right before Laura yelled how James had tugged Laura's shirt, leading to the physical altercation in the cafe. The prosecution tried to undermine her. "Are you perhaps biased in favor of your employee?" But Marjorie held firm, even scolding the fancy lawyer. "Sir, I'm biased in favor of the truth, and I witnessed these events personally." Her earnest testimony made an impact. Next came a tech expert who authenticated the video from friend number 3's phone. It had been turned over by police to the defense. The moment that video was played on the courtroom screens, it was essentially game over for James's narrative. The footage showed everything James's crew lying in wait. James grabbing Laura and hurling slurs, angry little waitress clearly audible, even the N-word made it in faintly, and the entire fight, including James's friends, attacking from all sides. It was harrowing to watch, and completely refuted the unprovoked claim. In the video, you could even hear James at the end threatening to sue and get her expelled, which certainly made his motives suspect. The courtroom was silent as the video played, except for a few gasps. A slight smirk crept on Laura's face as she saw James sink lower in his seat. His parents closed their eyes. They knew how bad this looked. To bolster it further, the defense called the student who had witnessed the ambush from afar. He confirmed he saw the group surround Laura. They also called Laura's martial arts instructor from the rec center, who testified about her character. Laura has always been level-headed and only employs self-defense when necessary. In fact, from what I see on that video, she exercised restraint. She used just enough force to neutralize threats and then stopped. That's exactly what I teach: defend and de-escalate. This countered any notion that she went beyond self-defense. Finally, Laura took the stand to tell her story. She was poised, honest, and heartfelt. She described how excited she was to start college and how the harassment began and escalated. She spoke of the pain of being demeaned for her race and status, the anxiety and fear she felt, and how she reported nothing initially because she worried she wouldn't be heard. There were tears in her eyes when she recounted the slur incident. She then described the terror of the parking lot attack. I genuinely thought they might really hurt me. It was dark, no one around. I did what I had to do to protect myself. I never wanted to fight anyone. I only knew I didn't want to end up in the hospital, or worse. Her authentic emotions struck a chord. Many in the audience, even those who came out of curiosity, were visibly moved. James's lawyer tried to rattle her on cross, but it backfired. He asked in a sharp tone, "Miss Johnson, do you hate these boys? Is that why you attacked them?" Laura firmly replied, "I don't hate anyone. I just wanted to be left alone to do my job and get my education. They wouldn't let me be." He pressed, "You think you're some kind of vigilante dishing out pain, don't you?" She answered quietly, "Standing up to bullies doesn't make someone a vigilante. It makes them brave or desperate." I was both. Even the judge raised an eyebrow at that poignant answer. When the evidence phase concluded, it was painfully clear James's case was built on lies. The judge, after a brief recess, returned with a decision. In a measured tone, he said, "Having reviewed the evidence presented, particularly the video footage, it's apparent that the defendant's actions were in self-defense. The claims of unprovoked assault are not supported by the credible evidence. Therefore, I find no probable cause to proceed on the felony assault charges." A collective cheer erupted from Laura's side of the room. She closed her eyes in relief as her mother squeezed her hand. The judge wasn't done. He sternly addressed the prosecution side. "Furthermore, I am deeply concerned that crucial context was omitted when these charges were filed. It almost appears as an attempt to weaponize the legal system against Ms. Johnson. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for review of whether any false statements were knowingly made in the course of this investigation. That essentially hinted that James's crew might face consequences for lying." James's lawyer went red in the face, quickly muttering about dropping the civil suit as well, no doubt to avoid further embarrassment. As people spilled out of the courtroom, Laura was mobbed by well-wishers. She was free, cleared, and vindicated. James, meanwhile, slipped out a side door with his parents, avoiding the press. It was not lost on anyone that his family's influence had not saved him from public disgrace. In fact, a few major news outlets ran stories that night like "Wealthy Donor's Son Orchestrates False Accusations," "Scholarship Student Exonerated," a PR disaster for the Colress. Their name, once associated with philanthropy on campus buildings, was now linked to racial bullying and lying. In the weeks that followed the hearing, things changed significantly at the university. The administration, under pressure from both students and outside observers, issued a public apology to Laura. In a special assembly attended by faculty and students, the university president personally acknowledged the failure to protect Laura from harassment and commended her courage in standing up against bullying. No student, he said on stage, should have to endure what Laura endured. "We are instituting new anti-bullying and anti-discrimination policies effective immediately." It was a formal victory, but also a deeply emotional moment for Laura. She received a standing ovation in the auditorium, hundreds of students from all backgrounds rising to their feet, clapping and cheering for her. On that stage, Laura blinked back tears. The very campus that once whispered about the angry black girl was now celebrating her as a hero. James did not escape unscathed. The university's discipline committee, armed with the evidence, suspended him for a year for his misconduct. Many thought he deserved expulsion, but rumor had it he withdrew voluntarily to avoid further humiliation. His closest accomplices were also suspended or put on strict probation. The Colris family, previously big donors, found themselves under scrutiny. Their influence weakened as the school sought to distance itself from any notion of favoritism. Publicly exposed, they quietly dropped any talk of lawsuits. In fact, an anonymous source from their side admitted to a reporter that they misjudged the situation. The family slunk into the background, their social standing diminished by the scandal. Laura, meanwhile, became something of a campus icon. The viral videos of her self-defense had already made her well known, but now her name was synonymous with resilience and justice. Students would come up just to shake her hand or thank her. One day she found a note left on her dorm door. "You inspired me to speak up about my bully." A student. She had no idea who it was, but it warmed her heart. Rather than shy away from the spotlight, Laura decided to use it for good. With support from a couple of professors and her ever-supportive boss, Marjorie, who became a lifelong mentor, Laura launched a new campus initiative, Safe Students Against Fear and Exploitation. It combined anti-bullying campaigns with practical self-defense workshops. Every Wednesday, she led a free class on basic self-defense moves in the rec center. Attendance was huge, especially among women international students and others who often felt vulnerable. She taught them not just how to kick or punch, but how to stand confidently, how to de-escalate, and when necessary, how to fight back smartly. The mantra was, "We hope you never need to do this, but you'll feel stronger knowing you can." The energy in those classes was empowering. Students left feeling more in control of their safety. In addition, she worked with the campus counseling center and multicultural office to set up real talk forums, candid discussions about microaggressions, racism, and how to support each other when witnessing bullying. She shared her story, and others shared theirs. It turned out there were many untold stories of discriminatory incidents on campus that had been swept aside. Laura's case had opened the floodgates for an honest reckoning. The administration, keen to regain student trust, supported these efforts. They instituted an anonymous reporting system for harassment and hired an equity officer to ensure complaints like Laura's would not be ignored in the future. Not all change was institutional. Some of it was cultural, even lighthearted. The student body, in a show of solidarity, turned the nasty nickname Scholarship Girl on its head. A group of students started a fundraiser selling t-shirts that said, "Proud Scholarship Kid," with proceeds going to a scholarship fund for underrepresented students. Laura laughed when she saw students of all economic backgrounds wearing those shirts around campus. Even some faculty wore them on casual Fridays. It was a subtle poke at the elitism James embodied, and a celebration of those who, like Laura, worked hard to be there. On a bright spring afternoon, a few months after everything, an official ceremony was held in the quad. Laura was invited as a guest of honor. To her surprise, the university had decided to honor her. They announced the creation of the Laura Johnson Courage Award, a scholarship in her name that would be awarded annually to a student who demonstrates exceptional bravery in standing up for what's right. As this was revealed, Laura's breath caught. Students around her cheered. She was asked to say a few words. Taking the microphone, she paused, gazing at the diverse crowd before her, faces full of respect and expectation. "I am truly humbled," she began, voice slightly shaky, but growing stronger. "A year ago, I was just another freshman worried about making friends and passing exams. I never imagined I'd be here in front of you like this. Everything that happened, it was something I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I learned that silence in the face of injustice is its own kind of imprisonment. I stayed silent for a long time because I was scared, and I know many of you out there have done the same at times. But when I finally spoke up, when I finally fought back, I found not only my voice, but a community." She gestured to the audience where her friends, mentors, and supporters sat. We have a saying now in those workshops we do. We're stronger together. It's not just about self-defense moves or policies. It's about having each other's backs. She took a moment, then continued. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't let anyone make you feel small or unworthy because of who you are. And if you see someone being mistreated, stand with them. Speak up. Your voice might give them the courage to find theirs. This award isn't just for me. It's for every student who ever felt scared or lesser and decided to stand up anyway. Thank you for turning my darkest moments into a light that can guide others. I am proud of this community, and I'm proud to call this campus my home. Thunderous applause followed, echoing across the quad. Laura stepped off the stage to hugs and congratulations. In the crowd, someone started playing a certain song over portable speakers, Beyoncé's Run the World Girls. A cheer went up as a spontaneous, joyful vibe took over. A few students started a playful reenactment of Laura's famous fight moves to the music, much to everyone's amusement. Even Laura doubled over laughing when a burly football player attempted and failed to mimic her spin kick, only to be corrected by one of the girls from her self-defense class, who had learned from the best. As the sun began to set that day, painting the sky in gold and pink, Laura sat on a bench watching groups of students mingle, some practicing the self-defense moves in pairs, others deep in conversation about changing campus culture. She felt a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. Through pain and struggle, she had found her purpose, making sure what happened to her would not happen to anyone else in silence. She had turned a personal battle into a movement for justice and respect. From the timid waitress who tried to swallow insults to the confident leader who inspired a campus, Laura had come a long way. Her story was a testament to the idea that sometimes the hero you're looking for is the person you see in the mirror once you refuse to back down. And as word of her tale spread far beyond the campus, it gave others hope that even in the face of cruelty and prejudice, standing up for oneself is not only possible, but powerful. In the end, Laura reclaimed not just her own dignity, but she became a catalyst for change, proving that a single brave voice, backed by truth and a community's support, can triumph over 1,000 lies.